Some things in their natural state have the most vivid colour. Okay, that's good. So The Wicker Man is an early 70s folk horror film inspired by the novel Ritual and Christopher Lee's proudest film accomplishment. So the film is based around Officer Neil Howie, who's been flown to a remote Scottish island called Summerisle to investigate the disappearance of a young girl. Upon arriving, he confronts a tight-knit community and their pagan habits, such as putting human viscera and solidified serpent ejaculate on gravestones. Very pagan. The devotion of the maypole, or the phallic symbol. The Hand of Glory makes an appearance, a candle made from the severed and pickled left hand of a hanged felon, and you may recognise this pagan artifact from Harry Potter, the Chamber of Secrets. So on arriving, Officer Howie enters the Green Man pub. The Green Man itself is a symbol of rebirth, and the cycle of growth that happens every spring. And there are actually many Green Man pubs in the UK. It's one of the remnants of paganism that kind of still exists, albeit much of it has been sort of expunged or reappropriated by Christianity. So the horror style in this film is very muted and kind of sophisticated, unlike quite a lot of other horror films of the time, such as by Dario Argento or something. And despite Christopher Lee's imposing demeanour, bass singing voice, and by 1973, typecast villain and Hammer horror film regular in films such as Dracula and The House That Dripped Blood, director Robin Hardy creates a really realistic world for us. The Wicker Man also doesn't go full scale down the psychedelic route. A film like Zardos, where Sean Connery runs around in a mankini in a post-apocalyptic world where savages worship a stone idol, with a kind of proto-surreal feel in the essence of Barbarella. The Wicker Man, however, is grounded in reality, almost like a 70s police drama. So the film presents major cultural and philosophical conflicts, most notably around sex, with Britt Ekland as Willow, the landlord's daughter. Britt Ekland. Her blatant sexuality and coquettishness, along with the pub-goers' sort of idolization of her and endless innuendos in their singing, and the conflict between Officer Howie's prudent Christianity and paganism, where sexuality is open and also embedded within local tradition. Organic flute music playing over couples fornicating in slow motion in the field near the Green Man pub in an effort to fertilize the soil. Great haunting music by Paul Giovanni. And the film captures this kind of languid essence of pubs, years of inebriation kind of baked into the walls almost. Christopher Lee's beautifully written monologue chides the officer's respectability and detachment from his animal nature. I think I could turn to and live with the animals. They're so placid and self-contained. And we see a close-up of snails mating, growing and embracing each other shamelessly. And as the officer prays on his bed, Lord Summerisle reveals the futility of his devotion to God. Like the snails, you get the feeling that the islanders are peaceful, are placid and self-contained. And at the beginning, you kind of feel like you're siding with the pagans, or I did at least. So the film obviously puts Christianity and paganism into conflict, but also science and superstition. So Officer Howie represents Catholicism, kind of counters the superstition of the islanders. And it could be argued that Catholicism helped lead the way to scientific discoveries. The Vatican Observatory being one of the leading places for astronomical inquiry, Catholicism also helped start the first universities, such as in Bologna, Paris, Oxford. Now looking back from the modern era, you could scoff at this, but what do you have to compare it to? Naked women prancing over a fire to increase their chances of fertility? Okay, spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler alert. If you haven't seen the film, don't watch anymore. How does that sound? So Officer Howie is largely scientifically minded. He tries to level-headedly reason with their superstitions at the end, saying that the reason the crops failed was because these fruits aren't meant to grow on this island. They were cultivars, brought over by Lord Summerisle's grandfather in 1863. So cultivars are non-native plant species genetically modified to look nice, but have absolutely no symbiosis with the environment. They likely don't pollinate, and more importantly, they can't adapt to climate change. So Lord Summerisle's grandfather bought the island, reverted to paganism, introduced these cultivars in this sort of Enlightenment era of scientific rationality and objectivism in an effort to kind of convert the island into an Edenic tropical paradise, and making the inhabitants rely on these fruits and crops which weren't meant to be there in the first place, setting them up for failure. It was probably just a massive project to feed his ego or suit his hedonistic tendencies, bringing up his son and grandson and the rest of the inhabitants as enlightened heathens. So after such a tragic harvest the year before, the islanders need to make the perfect sacrifice to appease the gods. And they do this by burning a giant wicker man full of imprisoned animals and other sacrificial offerings. So Officer Howie is a man of authority, of pure intentions, which makes him a great sacrificial choice. And he is also a virgin. And he's tempted by Willow in such a great scene later in the film. So as Howie's trying to get to sleep, Willow is next door, naked and full of the pagan spirit, singing a sort of a love ballad to him through the inn walls. The live band playing downstairs as before. The whole island sort of speaking to Howie in musical unity. Very folky and psychedelic. So what's interesting is if you were to have given in to the temptation and bedded Willow, who's literally naked and slapping herself next door, he wouldn't have been a good fit for the Wicker Man burning. So the fact he's a virgin, faced with the ultimate temptation, and resisted it, means he's the perfect sacrifice. Playing a king for a day. And who but a fool would do that? So at the tail end of the film, you kind of side with Officer Howie. he calls Lord Summerisle out, revealing the true reason the crops have failed. Without finding Howie as the sacrifice, Lord Summerisle himself will be the sacrifice, which is a common practice in cultures around the world, where the sacred king is sacrificed in times of crisis, and that Lord Summerisle is simply diverting everything towards Officer Howie instead of him. So the islanders, who seem peaceful at the beginning, at the end seem like barbaric idol worshippers, even Lord Summerisle worshippers. So the film gives you a glimpse into this pagan age which existed on these isles before Christianity. The use of stone henges, which are a great signifier of this forgotten, obscured time in our history. The film presents so many conflicts, such as the nature of law and jurisdiction. Like, does a legal representative have the right to impose law on a completely different culture? Conflicts between Christianity, paganism, Apollo, Dionysus, rationality and our natural states of being. Great music by Paul Giovanni. Great costume design for the final May Day celebration. I believe this is one of the best English films ever made, the way it deals with these cultural and religious conflicts, its attention to detail, and the way it revives these pagan practices and rituals so alluringly. The way it's disturbing because it feels so real without succumbing to cheap horror tropes, and the iconic ending, almost Planet of the Apes in its sort of profundity and visual kick. Go watch if you haven't already. So you might not agree with everything I say, so let us know down below. Join the conversation. Okay, done.